storming in Indiana, and you never know.
Well, what's going to happen? Yeah. Well, we feel fortunate that it has worked, so it's all good. So maybe we'll go ahead and get started because we have a great lineup for our meeting today. And I think my job is to do a little housekeeping before we get started. So I'm just going to start by welcoming everybody to our quarterly International Commercial Fishing PFD Working Group meeting. And just a few reminders. I am recording today's presentations and the meetings so that the recording and the meetings can be posted on the iFish site for those who could not join us today at this time. I would also ask that anyone who's joined the call today, if you would just put yourself on mute if you're not talking so there's not background noise for those presenting. It'll make life a little bit easier. And then I think those are all the things that I wanted to just start off with. So maybe what I'll do now is turn it over to you, Jennifer, for some updates.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Hi, everybody. I'm going to this time leave my camera off because of the storm. I just am concerned about connectivity in rural Indiana. But anyhow, next time I'll be on camera so you can see my face. But I just wanted to let folks know, if I haven't met you, I'm Jennifer Lincoln. I work for the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health. I've worked on fishing safety projects since the early 1990s throughout the United States. And I've been an active part of the iFish conferences over the years, and am really happy that this group stemmed from the last conference that we had in St. John's, Newfoundland. And I see that Barb's on. Hi, Barb. It's nice to see your name. And anyhow, I just really like that these quarterly meetings continue, and we have these excellent topics that keep us connected each quarter. I also want to mention that we are just now starting to think about iFish 6. I don't have any details at all, but I know that throughout the pandemic, that since we've had these quarterly meetings, that I have said, I said early on, that we weren't even thinking about it. And I guess I just wanted to update the group that, well, now we're thinking a little bit about it. So later this summer, I would anticipate an email out to the previous scientific planning committee just to get some feelers out for initial steps. And hopefully later this year, we can share more details with this group and then other people that are also interested. So anyway, it's kind of exciting to think about that. But again, it's just the initial steps, and I don't have any specific details. So that's all. That's the only update that I wanted to provide today. And I look forward to the rest of today's presentations and discussions. Thanks.
Thanks, Jennifer. So I think we are fortunate to have an update from Alan Stevens, who presented riveting research on a prior International PFD quarterly call. And so, Alan, we're very anxious to hear what's been going on with your research on rearming and maintenance of PFDs.
Thank you. Hopefully you can all hear me. So last time I gave you a brief presentation on something that we were doing throughout last year, where we've just gone through a replacement program for all of our offshore and inshore lifeboats. There are two different types of life jacket that we have. What the offshore boat life jacket, crew life jacket, is a twin chamber 290 Newton life jacket. That's in two separate 290 Newton chambers with a pressure relief valve, so you don't get 600 newtons. If you set off a second one, you still only get 290. And also our RB one that has 100 newtons of inherent buoyancy built into it. It's a buoyancy aid, but it's uninflated, but it also then has a inflatable ladder in there as well. So if you inflate that manually when you're in the water, you'll get some additional buoyancy there. So we identified when we put the new life jackets out, we have reports back from stations that some people were when they were trying jackets, they were having what they called a partial inflation, in that the bladder didn't fully burst out of the cover. I said I won't go through what I did too last year, because I said that last time. Ongoing from that research and testing program that we carried out last year, we've just done, I say just done, we did it back in April. I managed to get the RNI has its own sea survival tank. We can generate 1.5 meter waves in there, so we can. It's a pretty rough environment. We decided to do a trial on partial inflations of life jackets. What does that actually mean for the individual in the water? So if you go in, your life jacket only inflates half the way around. What happens? Now I haven't finished writing the report yet. I've got a list of a backlog of work as long as next year. So I haven't got anything to show you. I've got plenty of video and plenty of photos, and hopefully at some point I'll be able to show you some of those. But we essentially, it was anathema for me to actually try and poorly pack a life jacket. I had myself and another engineer. We actually use RNI staff who are not familiar with life jackets. We asked them to repack the life jackets. We gave them the same information that our crews have, said, repack the life jackets. They actually did it pretty well. The first time we got them to jump in the water, we noted the results. The second time round, we put the waves on. We replicated this exercise. I should say as well, on each of these tests, what we did is we deliberately throttled the life jackets, which is the anathema part for me. We actually put Velcro straps around one side of the jacket to physically prevent it fully opening. We only had about 50% success, because the darn thing's got so much buoyancy in it, it was still bursting through even those. But we got what we wanted. We then went through and, as I said, deliberately badly packed the jackets. Myself and another engineer, we were going along, doing our level best to mangle the jackets as they were being, right up to, instead of neatly folding it in, scrunching it in, twisting it, doing a burrito roll with it around the jackets and putting it back in together. And then we got the people to jump in the water again. The interesting thing was actually all of the jackets did still inflate. Now, as I said, we throttled one side of the jacket to simulate still the partial inflation issue, but they were still inflating, albeit a bit slower. There was a noticeable slowdown in the actual inflation time, but interesting, they still initiated the inflation within the 5 seconds that's permitted, so they did actually inflate. As I say, things like self-righting of the individual in the water was slowed down. It was slower, but it was still happening. We got the people in the water to actually try and roll over on their fronts, and even with a partial inflate on the jackets, they were still struggling to do so. So as I say, at the moment, I just wanted to give you a very, very quick update where I am with that piece of work. It's ongoing. It's just been a very interesting journey looking at this. There's various other things now spinning into this project as well as a result of COVID. I've rolled into this as well. Like the rest of the world, the RNLI was going through a heavy decontamination program for all of our kit when COVID kicked off back in 2020. So we were using medical grade decontaminants on our jackets to keep our crews safe. I've had a concern all along what these sometimes strong, albeit watered down chemicals might be doing to the kit. There may be signs that it's doing something at this stage. I can't really say what. We're literally just about to start going into doing some lab testing and bits and pieces to see what these medical grade decontaminants and chemicals have done to the actual kit. I mean, it won't just be life jackets, because the RNI, we've got thousands of dry suits. We've got first thing somebody said to me back in March 2020 when COVID kicked on was, Alan, how the heck do we decontaminate a lifeboat? To which my response, well, that's probably not worth repeating here because it was unrepeatable. So there's lots of stuff going on. I just wanted to give you a very rapid update of where I'm going with this, but there's some interesting results coming out around the packing. It is still the opinion that packing your life jacket correctly is vital. If you don't pack the life jacket correctly, you can cause damage to the jacket itself, to the operating heads, gas bottles, etc. So packing is still vital. But interestingly, and as I say, I wouldn't, I haven't written this report yet, but we did see some interesting results when we tried to put a pool trial. So just a very quick update to say that there'll be more to come at some future date.
That's great. Thank you, Alan. Fascinating, especially the fact that you guys are tracking what those decontaminants are doing to the life jackets. So that would be interesting to hear more about. We have just a few minutes before Ted gets started. So if anyone has some questions for Alan, please just take yourself off mute and throw them out there. For a few of you, I did put you on mute, so you'll just have to ask to be unmuted, and I'm happy to do that. Does anybody have any questions? Well, I guess what we can do is if you think of a question, if something pops into your head, just write it down because we do have some time after Ted's presentation for questions. So if there are no questions at this moment in time, I think I will stop sharing and turn the controls over to Ted.
Okay, thank you. Let me get my presentation up and running here real quick. I always forget which order to do this in. There we go. Can you guys see my screen, my presentation?
Yes, we can.
All right, excellent. Let's see. Perfect. Okay, well, I just want to start off by saying good morning or good evening or good day, whatever the case may be, and thank Rebecca and Julie for the opportunity to present this information on our fishing safety success stories today. So I too, like Jennifer Lincoln, I work for NIOSH. I'm part of our Western States Division and have been working with the Commercial Fishing Safety Program since 2008. And I've been with NIOSH since 1999, so over 20 years, and done dozens of video projects over that time because I came to NIOSH with a background in broadcasting and mass communication, so not a public health background, which is typical of folks at the agency. So that's why I've worked with video over the years. And so the ones we're going to talk about today are the latest video series we did in support of our commercial fishing program that came out of some of our PFD work and our deck safety work. So to give you an idea of where we're going today, let's see if I can just move forward. There we go. We're going to talk about some background information on our program and some of the data we got that led, took the steps to get us here. Then we're going to watch one of the videos I'm going to talk about today, so we'll be familiar with the tone and feel of the series overall, and discuss then the concepts underlying the development of the videos and work through some of the logistics that we had to tackle to produce the series. So in time permitting, we'll do some Q&A at the end. So the fishing safety success stories are a collection of 4 short videos highlighting a potentially fatal event involving a commercial fisherman that was resolved with little or no injury using NIOSH recommended safety practices. So these were produced in 2017 and 2018 with the help of an external video production company. The current videos focus primarily on falls overboard, and we have one on deck safety, and they highlight the effectiveness of NIOSH recommended practices involving personal flotation devices and the use of emergency stop systems with winches. And again, so far there have been a wide variety of locations. We've shot in Oregon, Alaska, and up in Maine and New Hampshire. And so as I mentioned, we're going to watch one of the videos now, just so you can get a sense of what they're like. And this was one that was a fall overboard story that we filmed in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, with Dennis and Tyler talking about an incident on their vessel. And let's see if I can get this to work. I'm going to stop my share for a second because I realized I didn't hit that that option, Julie.
It's okay, it happens.
There we go. Now we should be good to go.
I loved being out on the water. You know, I love the feeling of it. Everything just kind of came naturally to me. We were heading out to set a load of gear, which consisted on our boat of 100 traps. It was my son, Tyler, and myself. We just got out there, and we hadn't even put a single trap in yet. And we dropped the tailgate at the back of the boat. I put the first trap down. It goes out, you know, nice and easy. And then after that, the rope snagged the second trap in the set. It bumped into me while I was there. I lost my balance. So instead of fighting it, I just jumped in. It's very hard for me to see with the amount of traps that are stacked up on the boat, and I didn't realize he had gone over until I didn't see his head pop back up. So I ran back, and that's when I discovered he was floating in the water. Very, lucky that I had my flotation device on. I was able to stay afloat. My father was able to kick the boat into reverse, and I was able to grab the chain along the side of the boat. When I was in the water, I really wasn't thinking about much. It was just more, I can breathe. And the next step was, getting out. When I finally was able to get back to Tyler, I was able to pick him up physically. I reached down and grabbed Tyler out of the water. The first thing, I guess, that went through my head is, I'm still here. I'm not one of those statistics. And after that, we just set the gear out and just went home. I think both of us were really in shock. We were both shaking. Never had a man go overboard, and to have one go over, have it be my son, that was a little scary. A week earlier, we had just taken a safety survival training course about exactly the same situation that might occur. They taught a lot of great skills there, and the next day we went out, grabbed a PFD, grabbed the personal EPIRB, and I started wearing that full time. It wasn't a hassle whatsoever. It just feels natural while I'm wearing it. That day I did reach out to the trainers from the Gloucester Fishermen's Wives Association, and I had to tell them the success story. Anytime that we're bringing a load of gear anywhere, I make the crew wear a PFD. Tyler was wearing a life jacket. Thank goodness for that. I'm glad that he was doing that. I would say that saved his life. The more you wear it, the better off you are. The more you wear it, the less you'll realize you're wearing it. So please wear them. Don't be stuck in your ways. Always be open to new things, especially PFDs. A little bit of being uncomfortable isn't the end of the world, but falling overboard without one could be.
All right, so that gives you a sense of, kind of what the stories were about and the tone, and, we tried not to make them overly dramatic. We just wanted to kind of let the fishermen tell their story. And where this all comes from, just to kind of get back to some of the background on it, we look at this because here's some, our statistics, right, going back to the year 2000 in the United States. Between 2000 and 2018, 31% of the fatalities in commercial fishing were falls overboard. And as we've reported before, 100% of those incidents happened without the fisherman wearing a life jacket. And so this is, something that we've been working on for, well over a decade now, and focusing on. And, we wanted to make sure that as we're continuing to report the statistics on the fatalities, we wanted to kind of talk about the successes as well. This is based, again, coming out of the NIOSH PFD study, something we've done to encourage life jacket use. And many of you have probably heard this information before over the years, but, we did the study up in Alaska back in 2008, 2009, we talked to 400 fishermen from 4 different gear types. And, it was great to see that, there were PFDs that fishermen could wear on deck. We identified fishery-specific preferences in PFD style and specific barriers to PFD use. But something else that came out of this was, as we were talking to these fishermen, we heard stories of guys going overboard and coming back, except that none of them were wearing life jackets. These were all guys that grabbed onto a buoy or just happened to tread water until someone came and got them. So there were incidents already even back then of guys that had survived these incidents. But again, mostly through luck, not really through preparation. The first survival story we heard after the PFD study was concluded was something we ran into by accident, quite literally. This here is the crew of the Paul Revere, is a setnet skiff up in Alaska and Bristol Bay, and they capsized their skiff one night while they were setting their net. It was about 1 or 2 in the morning up in Alaska, so still light out up there in June when I'm fishing. But the crew here spent over 2 hours in the water drifting with the current, but they were all wearing these inflatable life jackets. And when I saw this photo on the left here, I saw it in the back of a fishing magazine, just as, oh, hey, look, it isn't interesting. But I reached out to the magazine and said, I want to contact this crew and talk to them about their experience. And I was lucky enough to interview Shannon, the skipper there in the middle, and her crewman Don on the left. And so we made a video of that. And during that interview, they did say that, without the life jackets, we would not have survived. But it really, for me, identified kind of a blind spot in what we do, right? When we look at the data and look at the statistics, we're catching events where things went wrong and ended poorly, right? These are the fatalities we're looking at. And so learning about this event brought 2 things to my attention. It showed me that, PFDs can indeed save the lives of commercial fishermen. And where there's one story like this, there's probably others. But it also showed that we had a blind spot, right, in our surveillance, because our surveillance system only collects the fatalities and the incidents and accidents that are reported to the Coast Guard or reported through other channels. And in this case, when this event happened, there was no requirement whatsoever that they report anything to the Coast Guard. The only thing they had to do was radio into the Coast Guard that their vessel was actually still out in the bay and might be a hazard to navigation before it washed back into shore. But as far as personally what happened to them, the Coast Guard had no interest whatsoever since they survived. So we wanted to see if we could find other examples of these stories and start looking for ways to amplify those successes to the industry, as cases where, hey, our recommendations are working, this works in practice. So to capture more of these stories, we started to kind of look at a way to frame them and sort of make sure that they were consistent and had a good, good sort of theoretical base behind them. And so to flesh out the concept, we wanted to have them with 4 key features. We wanted to make sure that we featured the fishermen. That as often as we could, we wanted to have them recount the story in their own words and tell an engaging story. Not manufacture unnecessary drama, but we wanted this to be something that people would see and remember. We wanted to make sure that we kept these videos short. So like the one we just watched was about 4 minutes long, because we wanted it to be more likely to be viewed outside of a normal formal training setting. We wanted this to be something they could watch on a mobile device or after hours, or just kind of virally pass around. And we wanted to make sure that these videos focused on one main message. So instead of tackling sort of the broader interconnected safety issues that are related to these events, we wanted to focus on the one actionable thing that people could do after seeing these videos. So, in the case of the one we just watched, the message is wear a PFD. For the one we did on deck safety, we wanted the focus to be install an emergency stop system on your winch. And so the idea of having fishermen be the main focus of these videos was based on some previous research that NIOSH had done in the late 90s, showing the effectiveness of using workers as messengers in training videos for the mining industry. That's where I actually got my start for the first decade I worked with NIOSH. The idea was to have messengers that looked, talked, and acted like the audience that were receiving the message or the training. And it turns out this method is well supported by literature dating back to the 1970s. By having an authentic messenger, that helps adult learners and audiences be more receptive to the information, since the verbal and visual messages are more likely to align with the norms and practices of their occupational culture. So every occupation, but especially high-risk occupations, have a collection of norms and standards that the members abide by. And this is usually summed up by saying, this is the way we do things around here. It helps develop the bonds and associations between members of that group and kind of separates the insiders from the outsiders, allowing those in the group to support each other and the shared risk that the job usually entails. And so we've used this method, again, like I said, in the mining industry. We've used it for videos we've done with the oil and gas industry. And you see these sort of tight-knit occupational cultures in law enforcement, firefighting, military, and things like that as well. Another aspect of the mining and fishing industry that really helped with these videos was the power of storytelling. Both of these industries have strong occupational cultures with a rich tradition of oral storytelling and well-established master-apprentice style models of learning new tasks and roles. A new miner or fisherman is often paired with a more experienced worker to learn the job, right? And so the hazards that they learn the hazards, and they also start learning the culture of the workplace as well. And so we wanted to leverage all of that in our safety success stories. By putting these messages around a story, wrapping them with a story, it's a powerful way to encode information that the audience needs to know, and it makes it easier for them to remember. For high-risk issues, these stories allow people to learn of the potential consequences of the risky environment without having to experience that risk themselves. Additionally, these videos feature other people central to the stories, such as sons and brothers and crew members who were key witnesses or rescuers in each of the stories. And including these people in the stories reinforce the concept that while these events may happen to one person, they do affect whole families and communities when they result in injury or death. And so the third concept we want to make sure we did was to keep these short, and or the fourth is we want to keep them short and to the point. So we know through our work with CDC that they keep telling us that people's attention span for streaming video keeps getting shorter and shorter, and so we wanted to keep these down to about 4 or 5 minutes. In the past, when we've done other videos for fishing and for mining, some of those videos have been 30 or 60 minutes long because they were designed to be used in a formal training scenario with a live instructor that could guide viewers through additional educational points and additional training. So these videos, though, are going to kind of be standalone, and they would ideally just run, again, that short format, 4 or 5 minutes. And we wanted to keep them focused on a single event rather than more complex themes and instructions. This also aligns with the best practice for creating video for social media or digital consumption of having one main message, telling it early and telling it often. So how did we go about actually getting these videos put together? We started tracking down potential success stories in 2017 by listening to the stories our partners were telling us at industry events and meetings, or when we're out collecting data, during our PFD studies. We basically put our ears to the ground and our boots on the dock because, again, these types of events don't tend to be reported through any sort of official surveillance channel, right? It's considered a near miss, or it's considered, just something that doesn't warrant, being reported if there's no injury. So we put our word out through our networks that we're interested in capturing these types of stories, and slowly the leads started to trickle in from all across the country. Like I mentioned, Oregon, Alaska, we had some from Texas that came up, Maine, New Hampshire, and some were falls overboard and some were deck injury prevention. So we wanted to make sure that the stories could cover any topic that was relevant, to fishing safety. The tricky part was getting fishermen to agree to tell their stories. This often took multiple phone calls and emails to get them on the phone. The fishermen, I think, are notoriously hard to get a hold of from time to time. Everyone we contacted was eventually willing to participate when we told them who we were and what the project was, and we assured them that we weren't trying to sensationalize this event. We wanted, I think a lot of times people don't like to talk about this, either because there was a trauma involved, or in some cases, they're embarrassed about the fact that they ended up having this, fall overboard, or something that to them seems, I don't know, maybe demeaning or degrading, because, a professional fisherman shouldn't have this situation happen to them. But I think that the fact that these stories all had successful endings helped us convince them that we're just trying to help their peers address these hazards, and we weren't paying attention to necessarily, what went wrong leading up to this. We're really focusing on, the preparedness and the response that allowed the situation to end in a positive way. So for capturing these videos, we can be done with a wide range of production techniques. You can do it with an iPhone, you can do it with in-house capability if you've got it, or you can do like we did here. We had some funds and some resources to do a professional video production crew. We lucked out as we were doing our look here, because the crew we ended up working with was a group from back in Maryland, and the lead cameraman here, Tony, his family actually is a commercial fishing family from Kodiak, Alaska. So he grew up around commercial fishing, and he has, his dad runs a boat, and he grew up working on boats. And so he knew the environment, he knew the culture, he knew, what he was shooting. And it was great to have him there to, really help capture these stories in a way that, again, I think reflected very positively on the fishermen and the industry and the culture. So, but that, again, that doesn't mean you need to have the full-blown, production value that we had. I know that during the course of the Life Jacket for Lobstermen project, I know NEC captured some just quick stories that they heard at trade shows and at expos, and those are just as powerful because, again, it's a fisherman telling his story directly to the viewers, and that was just captured on an iPhone. You could take that and then give it the full production treatment and get some B-roll and do that stuff if you want. But it's not necessary. Again, the story is the really important part to focus on here. Another example that I have here, our oil and gas program did a video about protecting oil and gas workers from hydrocarbon gases and vapors. And again, this one was not a success story necessarily, but it did feature survivors, of a gentleman that had succumbed to hydrocarbon fumes on a work site, and talk about the impact of that. And but again, it's the narrative and the safety message is wrapped around this story that's rather compelling. So in summary, if you want to create these similar videos, try to use the members of your audience as messengers to increase authenticity, right? Let them tell their story their own way. Get out in the field with your audience to hear about these successes. Make sure, again, they're hard to capture sometimes, but I try to keep a list every time I hear a little something. I try to write down, where it was and who it was, and if I can try to track down that person later, I'll try to, because we do these, as resources allow. So you may not have the time or the ability to do it at the moment, but these remain valid, even years later. I mean, some of the events that we captured happened back in, 2012 or 2014, but they were still relevant. So you do want to make sure that you keep your video focused on one distinct actionable message, right? What is the one thing when they're done with this you want them to do? And again, these can be produced with multiple levels of production. It's the narrative, it's the story that is critical. So if you get that put together correctly, whether it's shot on an iPhone or a professional level camera, it can still have an impact. And with that, we have time for a couple questions. I do want to say, if you want to watch this whole series, like I said, we've got 4 of them. If you can go to our website here, under our video section, you can find all of them there and watch them on YouTube. And with that, I will turn it back over to Julie.
That's great, Ted. Thank you. I think you guys just did such a remarkable job on producing those. I think I've seen all of them, and they're all impressive. So I think we have about 20 minutes for questions. So maybe Ted, if you want to stop sharing, then you can. It's easier just to see if anybody has their hand up. But anyway, I would just encourage people, if you have a question, take yourself off mute and just throw it out there.
Question for Ted. This is a great presentation. So tell us a little bit about the next steps. You created the videos. How did you get people to watch the videos? How did you get them to watch them? Like, was there a way you track data to get some good information on who's watching, when you're catching people, et cetera?
So, I mean, we disseminated these basically electronically. I mean, they were, put up on YouTube and disseminated out through social media. We put out announcements of their release to our partners, like AMC and NEC and folks like that. And so we're kind of depending on just the word of mouth to spread them around. Since they are kind of evergreen as far as their content, we can continually, re-up them. If we've got for the one that was a lobster one that we watched, right? So at the beginning of lobster season, we can repost that one and try to generate some more interest in that one. For the one that was focused on salmon gill netting, we can focus on that. One of the other ones is on Dungeness crab, was a Dungeness crab fisherman that fell in the water. So we can time the messaging around these with the start of their seasons, and that's kind of what we've done so far. We did have one. I would love to get some down in the Gulf of Mexico, because so far these ones may not be necessarily relevant to a lot of the guys that work down there. And so we had one that was kind of in the works, and we heard a story about someone who'd used one of our interventions to prevent a winch entanglement down there. And when we contacted the guide, he was very, very hesitant to talk to us, and ended up kind of saying, "Oh no, I don't remember that. No, never really happened. I don't remember that." And so it's like, okay, so we had to kind of leave that one alone. But yeah, those are kind of the next steps. Is just use that social media dissemination and that sort of recurring cycle of fishing, because again, the hazards reign. The hazards aren't gone. They're back every year. So
Beck.
You know, just Ted, that was just wonderful, and I love your videos. Just to follow on what Mary Ellen said, I have a feeling that the videos, once they're posted, sort of get lost on websites, and I bet every organization on here has something like this that they've created to some degree for their programs. And I just wonder if we can all try and figure out how to better share and keep sharing information like this, because as you said, these are timeless. And you know, if periodically everybody just shared these resources around, I think we could get them back out on, you know, social media or various websites and just have a little more exposure on these, because these are such good videos. And I would imagine there's some others here from folks that would do well to be seen again. And we may all think that everyone knows about them, but probably that's not the case. So I don't know if people have ideas on how we could better share these resources. Maybe it's on the IFISH website. You know, I don't know. We need, I think, a better way to get things around and about again and again.
Thanks for mentioning that, Beck. Lily, did you want to ask a question?
I do. So Lily Colby, I work for Mustang Survival, and I have to say, even after over 20 years working with life jackets, you know, previously with MTI life jackets, which is recreational, when I see a testimony like that, a storytelling, I get choked up. I get choked up, and I have to say, you know, thank you for reminding me that this is why we are so interested in life jacket wear, is hearing the stories from the people that survive. And Mustangs, so I was so excited to see Mustang Survival. I'm like looking at the life jacket. So which life jacket is that? Mm-hmm. And so here's the thought. You know, you talk about trying to use behavior. How do you change behavior? On the life jacket, it says work vest very clearly on the side. Do you think that for professional fishermen, for lobstermen, et cetera, do you think by sort of blatantly saying this is a work vest, you know, like I'm a professional, you know, I'm not a recreational weekender, I'm a professional, does that help? This is a question to the whole group, really. You know, does that help the users identify that of their profession, of being proud of that profession? Do you think that that matters? And I ask that because, you know, we're looking at always and changing the models, the styling for the future. And my product team group is now getting more engaged with our commercial design focus. And I'm just wondering, does that matter? Do you think that matters to have work vest on it as an identifier?
I mean, I think that the one those guys are wearing, I mean, is one of through the studies we've done, is one of the most popular types of vests there are, because it is built for commercial application. So it stands up to the rigors of being rubbed against, you know, lobster traps all day and being rained on and splashed. And so I think, you know, the work vest designation, I believe that's more of a Coast Guard, like that's a category that they have and have that on there. But I mean, you know, whether it says work vest or not, yeah, whether it says work vest or not, I think they just want it to stand up, you know, to what they do and be appropriate for what they, you know, what they're doing. And so it's, yeah, I think that paying attention to what they want feature-wise is the big one, you know, and you know, helping them, and I think Julie and Rebecca know this too, is understanding that, like, you know, everyone loves how light and slim and inflatable is, you know, but they think that means, oh, I can fit it under my raincoat. I don't think you're supposed to do that. Like, you know, that impedes its functionality. And so there's some education that needs to go in there as well. You know, I think one of the goals we did a follow-on project a couple years after our initial PFD study, trying to get guys to wear life jackets. And one of the things we were trying to focus on was getting them to change their mindset that this is not a piece of emergency gear. You know, this is not something you wear when things go wrong. This is something you wear all the time in case something goes wrong, right? It's just a standard piece of deck gear, just like your boots and your rain gear. And we had some success with that, and some fishermen bought into that, you know, and we're seeing increased use among certain fisheries, but it's not across the board. You know, again, it's such a fishery specific, and in some cases, you know, fisherman to fisherman specific issue. I think that you just have to just keep working on them, and variety is key, because we had, we did some PFD giveaways during one of our things where, we purposely, instead of saying, oh, we're going to give your crew 6 of these same PFDs, we said, we're going to give you whatever PFD your crew member wants, because we know that if they pick it and they think they're going to like it, they're more likely to wear it, rather than you as a captain deciding, oh, everyone's going to wear this one, So that's the biggest trick I've seen with fishermen, is making sure they have options, that they know what those options are, and they're available. So.
Well, I think it's I love the video. I'm actually going to be sharing it today. We have a Teams channel with all 500 members of our Mustang survival team, which is spread out all over, remote workers everywhere now. And I'm going to share that video on that channel. So we will all see it at Mustang. Thank you.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, what made me so happy about that video was how well worn his PFD looked.
I know.
That's what I like, is that you had to really look at the logo and be like, oh yeah, that is a Mustang, all covered in, slime and whatever. So yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you. Andy, you had your hand up.
I did. Ted, that was really wonderful, and I remain inspired. This question is for you, but it's for anybody else too. You talked about near misses or close call data, and we did some surveillance in the Gulf, and we included in our surveillance actual injuries and illnesses, but we had questions that related to close calls and secondary reports as well. And so, as you know, close call data or near misses isn't negative data. It's just not positive in the sense, of the real term of it wasn't an injury. There was no injury outcome from an event. But our data really indicates, and you're mirroring this, that the amount that we can learn from close calls, where someone didn't necessarily, wasn't a fatality, they pulled themselves out, or they got hit with something, it was a near miss, or it was a slip, and they could have died if they hit that, but they were only a millimeter away from something. Those are really important data to learn from as well. And I was wondering how folks use those types of data to supplement and support the other more typical types of data where there's an event outcome. Or does this go into the storyline to help build evidence bases?
Yeah, these are so, at least in my experience, these have been really hard to capture, right? So these are anecdotes. These are very just unique individual events, just cases, really. And so it's hard to build a broader sense of what's going on. I think for us, it's nice once we share these. When we're doing the reviews and we're doing the clearance for these, a lot of the comments I would get back from some of the safety experts that would do this, they want the whole thing. They say, oh, well, the reason this happened is because they didn't do X, Y, and Z, ahead of time. Like this could have been prevented, or or they did these things wrong in their response and they should have done these things. You need to highlight that. I'm like, well, again, these videos are very narrow focused, and so we don't want a 15-20 minute video explaining comprehensively what's going on. So that's integrating these stories and the entire account of what happened in each of these events into a broader, sort of sense of what can be done to prevent or respond to these things. That's the important part. There's details that didn't make it in the video that that we can use them in other places as we're talking about falls overboard or deck safety or whatever the topic might be, that can be pulled out later and spoken of. It's just, they're not, again, it's not a top line thing to put in a 4-minute video. So but all other people, if they've had better success, again, kind of looking at a bigger set of these, like I said, these are very, in my experience, very hard to find and very hard to kind of get captured. So
does anyone else want to provide some input on Andy's question? Okay. Dan, I think you had your hand up, didn't you?
I did. Thanks, Julie.
Yeah.
I just want to let Ted know we just love that video. Love the 2 videos from Maine and New Hampshire, especially. I'm with Fishing Partnership Support Services, and it's the people we serve and work with, and we trained Tyler there for that event. And we just used it again. We posted it on our social media to promote some safety trainings about 6 weeks ago, and it got shared widely through different groups. So we're still using it, and we'll keep recirculating those as a way to do outreach and to inspire people to come to safety training. So thanks. And that kind of gets to Rebecca's point about, not letting it die away. One of the things we've been doing better on social media is tagging other groups who then share it again. So I don't know if this group is interested, but if there's ways we can collect people's Facebook and Instagram accounts, if there are groups that are active social media users, we'd be happy to tag different groups so that if you're interested, you can then share posts and things like that. We could be more active maybe on social media.
Thanks, Dan. I noticed that Mary Ellen posted a question in the chat, and she asked, the NIOSH Ag Centers coordinate safety campaigns so that messaging is coming from multiple angles entities during a fixed time, such as a designated week. So a good example of that might be Farm Health and Safety Week. And she asked, does this type of marketing campaign happen around Falls Overboard at a set time each year within the industry? I'm not aware of anything, but I think it's an intriguing idea and one that we might explore in this group. But Ted, I don't know if you want to comment on that.
So I think it's the U.S. Safe Boating Council does an event every May called Wear Your PFD to Work Day, which their focus is trying to raise awareness among recreational boaters that the weather's getting nice, but the water's still really cold. So you need to wear your life jacket, when you're out in the early part of the season. In years past, I've kind of tried to hijack that tagline a little bit in that event to say, well, there's guys that should be wearing their PFD to work every day. So it's not quite a perfect match, but that's the one event I can think of. I do know, some of the other industries, do big, like the construction industry does their, construction fall, like roof fall stand downs, and they do these week-long events, throughout the year on different topics. And that would be something I think for fishing. I don't know if it would need to be as narrow as fishing, or if you need to widen it out to other, water-based occupations, just to make sure you get this kind of critical mass and awareness. Talk about maybe broaden out to like more maritime industry, falls overboard, just so you can kind of get that mass of people talking about it and using the hashtag or whatever. But that would be something to look into.
Great, thanks, Ted, and great question, Mary Ellen. Maybe that'll be the start of something amazing. We can only hope. Charles, do you have a question?
Hi, Ted. That was fantastic. And as I was watching your video, we're working on a project in the Gulf now, looking at shrimp fishermen, as I mentioned, on adoption of PFDs and safety and occupational hazards. That we've been doing interviews with them, and I was looking through some of their stories as I was watching your video. Do you find that in the warmer waters, or if you've looked at the warmer waters, one of the comments we heard repeatedly was that if you're on a shrimp boat in the Gulf, you're going in the water at some point, and that you have to go in the water to untangle nets, to untangle lines, and that it's just that's how they do business. And so we don't want to wear the PFDs because I have to jump in the water at some point and I got to swim under the boat. And some of the stories are terrifying, to be honest with you. Swimming under the boat at night to untangle something. Please don't tell me this. But yeah, and I'm wondering, in those warmer waters, if you have situations like that they may not be wearing the PFDs all the time because they are used to going in the water. And we've even heard some comments and stories that you're more likely to drown with a PFD if you have an issue on the boat than you are without one, because you're going to get trapped in the boat and you can't swim your way out. If the PFD is pulling you up and you're trapped underneath something. Have you found any of the similar types of stories or feelings in the northern regions to what we're seeing in the southern areas?
It's a big part of our first study that we did was, people's attitudes and opinions about PFDs and their beliefs about their utility. And, there's this, again, folks had anecdotally stories of not wanting to wear PFDs for entanglement issues or whatever. And after about the, second or third field trip I did collecting data, I started asking guys like, you can't wear a PFD because it's going to snag on the gear and it's going to haul you overboard or whatever. It causes an entanglement hazard. I'm like, so who do you know that's happened to? Like, name me one guy that's happened to. And they can't, because back then nobody was wearing PFDs. So it's never happened to somebody. They ultimately say, oh, well, he got his arm caught or he got his leg caught. I'm like, well, that's not the PFD. That was, something else entirely. So the Gulf is a different one. We haven't done a lot of, PFD work in the Gulf. So from the trips I've taken and the times I have talked about it, The bigger issue I've heard from guys is not the in-water stuff. That's actually, that does sound terrifying to me. But the heat issue was a big one for them. Is every PFD I had that I could show them, no matter how slim, no matter how light, they're like, man, it's the Gulf. We're gonna melt. Like, this is just way too hot for us. And so that's the bigger issue I've seen down there. For things like in-water performance, I mean, there are manually inflatable PFDs. So you could wear, like, there's some that are like belt pack style, right? You wear like a fanny pack around your waist. So if you're worried about something getting snagged or in the water, like, go ahead and throw that one on and do what you got to do in the water. And if something goes wrong, you can pop that little tab and it'll float you up and you can put it on, you'll be fine. But I mean, there's answers to all their problems, I guess. We do hear that. Where I hear the PFD impeding your escape, actually I hear that more in aviation in Alaska. When planes crash and then flip over in the water, they're worried about the PFDs going off, and they do, for that reason, use the manually inflatable ones more than the auto inflator ones for that. I don't know if Jennifer Lincoln might have more history and stories about PFD hesitation in Alaska than I do.
I don't have anything to add, Ted. I think that you are you were in the field as much as I was, and got those stories. Actually, more so. I think that you were really good at getting more information out of them and asking the questions of, okay, if that's what you're worried about, has it happened? And yeah.
I just wanted to add that I think that it's human nature to think of all the reasons you can't do something that you don't really want to do. So yeah, people can be pretty creative. I think that when we first started in the Northeast, fishermen said, I can't work in a PFD, it's too uncomfortable, and there's just nothing I could use that I could work in. And then we went out and we trialed some, and they said, oh, hey, I can work in this.
Right.
So yeah, so I think it's just a matter of kind of exploring that with them a little further. So anyway, we're running a little short on time. I think we have about 7 minutes. I think maybe we have time for one more question. Somebody has it?
I think just one more thing to add on that is if a lot of times I think that people don't realize the innovations that have occurred in the design of these, and if they're not available in the gear shop that's at the right in town, then there's no way that they're going to be aware of them. So I really am intrigued by this idea of creating some synergy around this topic and promoting the I guess availability of these and along with the importance of wearing them, but just the availability may be something that is could be extremely motivating to folks. So I don't know. I really like this idea.
Yeah. Yes. All right. Well, Ted, thank you for a great presentation. Thanks to everyone for your comments and great questions. I wanted to mention that, and Charles, since we have you on the call today, we're hoping to set you up to present in September. So we have a quarterly PFD call coming up on September 14th. And I don't know, would it work for you to present a little on your research on that call?
Absolutely, yeah. I was trying not to spoil the September call because I had so many great stories and things to tell. So,
perfect.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to that in September.
Okay, perfect. So we have a speaker lined up for the September call, but I would also ask anyone on the call today to share any other ideas you have for upcoming speakers. So if you have any